surrounding who do we trust? And we are leaning back into a daily practice that we have not been practicing over the last 2 weeks. I began this year starting to go through a lesson every single day in the book, A Course in Miracles. And frankly, I started doing this for me. I picked up the book and was beginning to read it last year, and I didn't finish it and wanted to make sure that I was consistent with doing this daily practice every single day this year. And I've missed a couple of days, but I'm excited to get back on track and to do it with you. And so we're going to go ahead and start reading through this lesson that actually has very much to do with this question of who do we trust. And as we read through this, I'd love for you to kind of think through this lesson through this lens and through even this question of who do you trust. And, there's a lot of vulnerability with this question and even with the concept of trust. Who are we willing to unveil ourselves around? Who are we willing to expose ourselves to? And then on the other side of that, what ends up happening? Are we able to build trust? 2 days ago, we had a conversation of what do we do when trust is broken? But the question of who do we trust in the first place actually really needs to be examined, because so often trust gets broken early on in our adulthood or even early on in childhood, and we don't know how to rebuild it. So then we kind of live life with our defenses up and our walls up. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and read today's lesson. Lesson 183, I call upon God's name and on my own. God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. To call upon his name is but to call upon your own. A father gives his son his name, and thus identifies the son with him. His brothers share his name, and thus are they united in a bond to which they turn for their identity. Your father's name reminds you who you are, and even within a world that does not know, even though you have not remembered it. God's name cannot be heard without response, nor said without an echo in the mind that calls you to remember. Say his name, and you invite the angels to surround the ground on which you stand and sing to you as they spread out their wings to keep you safe and shelter you from every worldly thought that would intrude upon your mind. Repeat God's name, and all the world responds by laying down illusions. Every dream the world holds dear suddenly has gone by, and where it seems to stand, you find a star, a miracle of grace. The sick arise, healed of their sickly thoughts. The blind can see, the deaf can hear. The sorrowful cast off their mourning, and the tears of pain are dried as happy laughter comes to the world. Repeat the name of God, and little names have lost their meaning. No temptation but becomes a nameless and unwanted thing before God's name. Repeat his name and see how easily you will forget the names of all the gods you valued. They have lost the name of God you gave them. They become anonymous and valueless to you. Although before you let the name of God replace their little names, you stood before them worshipfully, naming them as God. Repeat the name of God and call upon yourself, whose name is his. Repeat his name, and all the tiny nameless things of earth slip right into perspective. Those who call upon the name of God cannot mistake the nameless for the name, nor sin for grace, nor bodies for the Holy Son of God. And should you join a brother as you sit with him in silence and repeat God's name alongside him within your quiet mind, you have established there an altar which reaches to God himself and to his Son. Practice but this today. Repeat God's name slowly again and still again. Become oblivious to every name but his. Hear nothing else. Let all your thoughts become anchored on this. No other word we use except at the beginning, when we say today's idea but once. Then God's name becomes our only thought, our only word, the only thing that occupies our mind, the only wish we have, the only sound that has any meaning, and the only name of everything that we desire to see, of everything that we would call our own. Thus do we have an invitation which can never be refused, and God will come and answer it himself. Think not he hears the little prayers of those who call on him with names of idols cherished by the world. They cannot reach him thus. He cannot hear requests that he be not himself, that he be not himself, or let that his son receive another name than his. Repeat God's name and you acknowledge him as sole creator of reality. And you acknowledge also that his son is part of him, creating in his name. Sit silently and let his name become the all encompassing idea that holds your mind completely. Let all thoughts be still except this one, and to all other thoughts respond to this and see his name replace the thousand little names you gave your thoughts, not realizing that there is one name for all there is and all that there will be. Today, you can achieve a state in which you will experience the gift of grace. You can escape all bondage of the world and give the world the same release you found. You can remember what the world forgot and offer it to your own remembering. You can accept today the part you play in its salvation and your own as well, and both can be accomplished perfectly. Turn to the name of God for your release, and it is given you. No prayer, but this is necessary, for it holds them all within it. Words are insignificant and all requests unneeded when God's Son calls on his Father's name. His Father's thoughts become his thoughts. He makes his claim to all his Father gave and is giving still and will forever give. He calls on him to let all things he thought he made be nameless now, and in their place the holy name of God becomes his judgment of their worthlessness. All little things are silent, little sounds are soundless now. The little things of earth have disappeared, and the universe consists of nothing but the Son of God who calls upon his Father. His Father's voice gives answer in his Father's holy name. In this external still relationship, and his Father's voice give answers to his Father's holy name. Oh, in this eternal still relationship in which communication far transcends all words and yet exceeds in depth and height whatever words could possibly convey in peace eternal. In our Father's name, we would experience this peace today, and is in his name it shall be given us. Y'all, I hesitated when I read this first line today. God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. And I actually want to camp out here because this made me feel really uncomfortable at first. And there's something that I'll just be brave and share. Um I I believe that God is man, something that I still have yet to fully understand. I believe that he is so incredibly powerful, and my dad told me one time, "If you can just believe God is good, if we could just believe God is good, and then everything else that happens around that it falls into place and comes into context and falls into the parameters of if I do believe that God is good, how then will I interpret this experience or this situation?" And y'all, there's something around that that's really, really important for us to consider because if we do believe that God is good, then that becomes the very lens through which I interpret life events. And if I believe God is not good, or if I believe God is not safe, we talked about this earlier in the week of who do you believe God is? What do you think about God? And we have to answer this question because so much of how we interpret the fabric of life itself is seen through the lens of this question. Maybe maybe you're an agnostic, maybe there's a lack of belief. That's still a belief. There's still a belief. I do not believe in God. That's still guiding your life. That's still a compass. That's still a lens through which you view the world. And so this question of who do I trust is absolutely necessary, especially as we're considering the concept of God. Now, I want to take it a step further though, beyond something just rather existential over do you believe in God or not? But this question, or I guess the statement really that starts off our conversation today, God's name is holy, but no holier than yours. I initially took a step back because I grew up actually very much so thinking that God is to be, I mean, I still believe that he is holy and he is the creator. And anything that is a creator that those goes and creates a world is thus superordinate to the very thing to which it created. It is higher. It holds more grandeur, let's say, and majesty over that which it created. And yet, while I do believe that, there is an element here where I grew up thinking that we are the created were much less so majestic and holy than I do believe that we are. If we're made in the image of the creator, if we were breathed life into by the creator himself, then we actually bear the marks of the Holy One. And therefore we hold a holiness about us that I actually think doesn't get emphasized enough. So I don't want to put us on the same level as God. And I know some people do, where actually it's if people hold the belief we are God. But I actually believe that Christ is in all, which makes us elevated beyond just this human status. It gives us this eternal life and this eternal spirit, and we are eternal beings. And I do believe that we're a splinter of God, every single one of us, where God's breath is in our lungs, and therefore we have a part of him in us. And in so being, there's a holiness and an elevation that when we look at ourselves in the mirror, do we see ourselves in accordance with our true identity as God, man, God lives in me. Do I treat myself and honor myself and respect myself accordingly? If I have the King of Kings and the Holy One residing in me, am I making myself, my thoughts, my soul, my spirit, a physically beautiful place for him to dwell? Am I creating that temple where the spirit of the Holy One would want to exist? Y'all, I like the concept of when we invite people over for dinner, for the most part, we'll clean our house up, even just a little bit. Like we'll make it look nice. The same goes to a much larger extent for the one who is our creator, who is our father. And so much of this is about calling on his name. So it's elevating us, helping us understand here's your identity. This is who your father is. And then go and live accordingly. Go act like it. Call on his name. Call on, like, utilize and out and make use of this relationship that we have with our father. Make use of our identity. Because man, if we're going to make use of the truth of our identity, of who we were created to be in the first place, then there is no reason that we should all ever walk around with our head hanging down. There is no reason why we should ever feel insecure or uncertain. There's no reason why we should feel alone. Y'all, this question of who do we trust? If we have access to the one who is all knowing, all loving, all powerful, then there is no reason that we should ever go through this world, go through this day with the fear that so often clings closely to us. Right now, yesterday I got some pretty horrible news, and it's a real attack on reputation, and it's a real lie. And it's funny, I experienced a lie 2 or 3 weeks ago. And y'all, I gotta say, my default, like, I would much rather just let me just step aside, go out of town for a couple weeks, let this thing die down, or go out of town for a year even, and, let it die down rather than going and addressing and fighting for the truth. It is so much easier for me to just kind of like, I'm gonna put my hands up and just step aside. And I think that this conversation, and even last night I was journaling and just kind of taking some time to get aligned. For those of you who are new to the show that don't know that term, the concept is that I realized this years ago. I lived so much of my life looking to the right, to the left, effectively looking, with my compass navigating east and west rather than north. And I was placing so much of my identity and my worth towards those around me and looking, do you say I'm enough? Well, who do you need me to be? How can I make you happy? I was so others focused that one, I lost access to and with myself, but I also was orienting myself to them rather than who I was created to be and to God himself. And in that reorientation, in so doing that, I've realized that, man, I need to take time to intentionally invest to call on the holy name of God, like our lesson today talks about. and to my own, to go inward. As I was laying in bed last night, so I got aligned last night and I had a thought, and then I was laying in bed last night and I had a thought. If God is not physical, so my experience with God can definitely happen in relationship with other people. But for the most part, it is in the silence. It's in the stillness. And actually, it's when I withdraw from this physical world and go inward, because Christ is in all, because God is in you and me, because he breathed his breath into our lungs, God is inside of us. And therefore, it is important and critical that we go inward, that we take time to cultivate the talking to God and the listening and the stillness and the pouring out of our soul, because our access to God so often is through the process of going inward. And yes, we can experience the presence of God in nature. I have so many times. But in going inward is so often when we can sense his voice and sense him speaking and sense direction. And so, because of that, we have these parts of our bodies, these systems that flush toxins and waste. The lymphatic system and the glymphatic system does it for our brain. We need to have a process that does it for the soul, so that we are pouring out the contents therein to make space and thus hear something new from God. If everything inside of us is just old or gestating or have been suppressed for decades, we're not fundamentally going to have the capacity to hear something new and receive something new that we need for here in this moment. So yesterday, in my time of alignment, I poured out my soul. I told God I was feeling actually angry, and I was starting to get resentful. And then I listened, and I just felt like God really gave me what I needed. And it was this reminder of, am I looking horizontally and placing my trust and my hope and faith in what other people are going to do around me and how other people might keep me safe? Or am I going to go inward and to the source, of life, to the source of comfort? There's this biblical concept, and this is just the law of attraction in so many ways. You shall know a tree by its fruit. What comes in comes out. What comes out then of us, we then attract more of, and then it comes in and then it goes out. It's this very kind of almost like water wheel effect. And if I am being filled with the truth, if I am sitting in the presence of God, what then comes out is love and joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. These are all marks and fruits of the Spirit of God living inside of me and active inside of me. And so if I am feeling anxious and resentful and angry, that is the lack of fruit. That is the lack of the Spirit, and thus a warning sign. I was talking actually with a client the other day. We've been doing I've really been kind of pursuing the blending of going in and looking under the hood of a business from a very professional lens, but then also one that's very relational, where it's, where are the relationships in turmoil within an organization, and how do we bring peace and reconcile that? And one of the things that, I had a really good conversation with the CEO, and I was thinking about it, every single relationship externally, every kind of external environment, every external experience so often is a mirror for us that, man, I actually need to go and attend to that inside of me. That's triggering me. That's making me angry. I kind of need to go and pay attention. I need to go and tend to myself and make sure, because so often that is a reflection. That is a reflection. How am I doing? Well, go be in a difficult relationship and then you'll find out. It is so much easier in some ways, it is so much easier to do life alone and never be in relationship, because we don't stand to risk vulnerability. It is difficult to be vulnerable with ourselves. I had to experience that in this process of regaining trust with myself. We talked about that 2 days ago on how to rebuild trust. And it is extremely difficult to be vulnerable with other people. There's a cocoon almost, like I'm just going to go inward and stay there. So when we talk about going inward, the goal is that we go inward, we go upward, as my friend says. We go inward, we experience the presence of God, we come to listen and know what he has to say, what is his perspective, because like my dad encouraged me when I was probably 17 years old, maybe even 20, if you can just believe that God is good, is that going to be the lens through which I view the world, through which I view this experience, this encounter? And then I go outward and experience the world, look at the world, come to know what is going on, and that is the lens through which I interpret and thus act accordingly. So in the process of going inward, it then and allows for us to actually love better and lead better and serve better. This goes exactly to what I was just saying in terms of working with these clients where we're looking under the hood and we're actually examining the relational side of their business. Where is their brokenness because we have lacked responsibility to go inward and heal whatever we need to in order to get to the next level for our own growth? So the question is not just, okay, who do I trust, but who am I going to for support? Who am I going to for my advice, for to be kind of, I like this concept of board of directors. And so a board of directors will go in, will take counsel from them. We'll go in and we'll listen and we'll hear the data that people have and the advice that they have. And so often that advice is because of their lived experience. And so when we talk about going inward, we are engaging our four core intelligences: the intellectual intelligence, spiritual intelligence, emotional intelligence, physical intelligence. And in so doing, we are accessing the data that we have lived and experienced before. And at the same time, in accessing and kind of turning on, it's like activating the spiritual intelligence. We now have access to God's voice, and now God is in the room, and God is the one who's also got a seat at the table. And the reason why, y'all, we can't just, this is really really important, we cannot in isolation just seek out the voice of God. And the reason why I say that is because our he gave us a mind for a reason. He gave us a physical body for a reason. He gave us the intellect. And so if we are just to silence all of the other parts of our being besides our spirit, we are actually abdicating responsibility to bring that which we know to the table and have a full-blown conversation and analysis over, I've got so much lived experience. I have so much wisdom. And yes, it is easier to actually just throw my hands up and be like, okay, somebody else tell me what to do. That is easier. But man, if I'm going to go into the war room, especially given this situation right now where it's been, reputation, very, very much so like an attack on reputation and identity. So, okay, who am I going to go to? And am I going to employ the resources that I have? And here's the thing, that's actually vulnerable because now we are actually part of the solution and part of the solve for this, rather than just throwing our hands up and saying, a counselor, God, come and tell me what to do. Now we can effectively say, well, God told me to do it. Well, the counselor told me to do it. And we're throwing our hands up and saying, I don't know. I'm just doing what I'm told, versus being an active participant in our lives. Y'all, my book's going to be coming out here in the next few months, and there's 3 parts of this book. And the third part is activating agency. And when I say agency, I mean like stepping into the fullness of the ownness of ourselves. You and I are responsible for us. There is nobody else that we can point the finger to and blame, even though we'd like to. And it's so much more comfortable when we do. Like, it's so much easier when we can point the finger and blame. So this question of, okay, who am I going to trust? Who am I going to rely on? Who am I going to take wisdom from and take counsel from, reveals so much of whether we will also include in that list of who I'll take counsel from. Will I take counsel from my own experience, life experience? And will I then take the time to cultivate the intelligence and the data around it? Because we can only draw from the experience that we really know and can trust. So, part of creating trust with ourselves is to actually understand the past, what we've been through, what has been our own life experience. When we talk about looking for somebody else to just take advice from, usually we've done that. That's a pattern, usually, that exists. If we are looking for somebody else to tell us who to be and how to live, what to do, then most often we have been looking outward for our own experiences to be interpreted. Those are 2 very consistent patterns of behavior. We rarely sit in our own experience and afford someone else the keys over our own decision making. So if we're giving someone else the keys to our decision making, even if it's God, the likelihood that we know our own experience and have sat in it, we know how that experience impacted us, we know how it's framed our lens through which we view the world, because every single lens shifts the dials a little bit. Like when you go to the optometrist and put your face against the dials, every single experience alters our lens and colors it just slightly so that tomorrow I'm different because of what happened today, for better or for worse. And so the goal is that we start adjusting the dials consciously rather than subconsciously, because we're not processing, because it subconsciously goes in and adjusts and we're like, wait a second, how come I don't feel the same way that I did yesterday or 2 weeks ago or 2 months ago? Well, maybe there's been subconscious experiences that we've been having that we don't even realize. And so much of this aspect, who do you trust, comes to this question of, are we living awake? Are we actually walking in the fullness of our agency, the onus of ourselves, the taking ownership and onus for you and me? Or am I just kind of throwing my hands up? I'm cutting off access to other people because I don't trust them, and I'm cutting off access to myself because I don't trust me. Y'all, when we have high defenses and high walls towards other people, it actually reveals that we don't trust what's within the gates. Our defenses reveal the weakness that we feel about ourselves. Because if we felt strong, we wouldn't need to defend. We wouldn't need to attack. And this is actually came from a lesson in A Course in Miracles 2 months ago. And it had such a profound impact, because usually I would equate my own ability to protect myself is in direct conjunction and I guess relation to the strength of my walls. It's not the case. The strength of my walls dictate the strength of, or I guess the amount of vulnerability and weakness that I feel. The amount of need to protect myself reflects the amount and strength of our walls. So if I allow for myself to be seen with wisdom by, let's just start with God himself, and then to go and have it reflect and kind of cascade down into relationships with other people. All right, I'm going to jump here in the chat. Good morning. Thank you all so much for joining. I'm so glad to see you. Just scrolling down. Oh my gosh, Stephen, what a good comment. Knowing God and having faith in God are two very different experiences. That is so wise. Man. I would love if you unpacked that. I would love. That is so wise. Bang Top, good morning. I'm glad to see you, my friend. Danny, hello. Thanks for joining. Sand Dune, hello. Stark, hello. Legend of the Earth, good morning. All Bosch, good morning. John Mayna, hello. Alwyn, AS, Javer, good to see you. Salim, hello. Vinay, hello. Mosin, Jody Holcomb, hello. Brian, thank you for joining. So grateful for you, my friend. So grateful. USM Casper. Casper says, of course she's selling a book. I don't even have my book out. Zen, Oaksy, hello. Good to see you. HB, I'm glad you're here. Sid, Patrick Henry. Alwina, hello. Just scrolling. Danny Neem says, what's this girl's name? I keep forgetting to turn my name on. Sorry. And turn my name on means like I'm allowed to include it on my screen. My name's Christene Marie. I'll go ahead and put it here in the chat. That's so funny. No one can know my name. Good to see you all. Just scrolling. Oh, I love this. Stephen says, God is the core of reality and densities. Perk, I'm glad you're here. It was so fun. He says, we had a great time in the chat yesterday. For those of you who weren't with us yesterday, we played trivia. We played trivia on the first Wednesday of every month. So that honestly, it was such a fun day. I loved it. So thank you for joining, and thank you for coming back. I'm so glad to see you. Al says, hello from the UK. Yay. I'm hoping to go there later this year. Danny, yes, I am real. I go live every day, but sometimes if we're on a roll, man, it takes me a little while to get back into the chat. Um, uh, Jeremy, good morning. Rishaba, yes, I can see your message. Hello, good to see you. All right, scrolling back up to the top. Leon, hello, Adam. Hello, Corey. Good morning. David, good morning. Anve says, what is this channel all about? This channel, so it kind of is akin to the name Knowing. The Knowing show is about knowing ourselves, knowing others, knowing, and we do talk business. I've got a branding and marketing business, and I serve as chief marketing officers for a number of businesses. And we've worked with Amazon and Toyota and all that. But the show really does harp on and kind of talk to the core of knowing who we are for the sake of the way that we lead, for the sake of the way that we love and serve our families, our businesses, our communities. My mission is that emotional health really permeates. I would love to see by the end of my life 1,000 leaders changed from like a molecular level, because then by way of their transformation, it will impact probably at least minimum 5 to 10 lives each. So then it's like, okay, now 1 million people are really changed. But I want even more than that. And I really want my mission and I guess dreams. That's my mission, because it's like, okay, it's good to have a quantifiable number to my mission. But my dream is that emotional health becomes a real staple in households and in businesses and like the way that we live. Rockefeller completely transformed the education system, and it's impacted generations. I don't know if I can do something that big, but I would love to have emotional health be something that we cultivate alongside. Okay, we learn to read when we're children. Okay, we learn to become emotionally regulated. We learn to do relationships. Y'all, so much of life is predicated on relationships, and we're never taught how. We're not taught how to do them. We're not taught how to engage in conflict. I was sitting at a table with, 5 different executives the other day, and we were walking through, okay, what does conflict resolution look like? How do I do this in a way that honors each other? How do I do this in a way that I feel heard and seen? That actually the thing that's wrong can get communicated without me yelling and screaming as a grown man, but I can process how to do this. And that's a real example. But I can do this by way of knowing myself well enough to thus communicate it. Adrian, I'm so glad to see you. We can do something that big. That's what I'm doing with Skill Stacker. We need to continue our conversation. Y'all, it is so, so, so important that we understand ourselves so that we can understand others. We can understand, how can I tap into today? We talk about calling on the name of God. That is probably the most powerful source that we could go to. But if we don't know our own identity, there is no way we're going to be able to walk in the fullness of our own power and access to the greatest power of all, the one we were created like. So the Knowing show is reminding ourselves who we were created to be in the first place, reminding ourselves of our identity. In fact, my book says knowing, remembering who you were created to be. It's about remembering, because we have access right here, right now, at all times. And so often we just forget. We just forget because we're fixated on the right and to the left, looking to everybody around us, to having them tell us who to be. And we forget, what is the truth? What does God say about me? Who did I come into the world as? And let me return to that. When Michelangelo was asked, how did you sculpt David? That's what he said. I removed who David was not. So much of this remembering is a removal. And you kind of can liken those two together. In the removal, we thus remember. Just jumping back here in the chat, Ronnie Rocks, I'm glad to see you. It's so funny. I completely fell off the wagon of doing my early morning show. It's been probably 2 weeks, I think, maybe 3 weeks. It's been 2 or 3 weeks of going live in the evenings or just at a weird time during the day. And so yesterday we were on playing trivia, and Nico was like, why are you not going live in the mornings? And so He called me forth, and here we are. So I'm very glad to see you. It has been a while. Oh, I love this. Percocet says, peace is underrated. Mm, honestly, isn't that so true? And y'all, even in you saying that, it really begs the question of, when we're talking about who do you trust, what even are our own metrics of success? What is our own ideal? And have we created that? Yesterday or 2 days ago, we talked about how to rebuild trust after it's been broken. At first, we started out the conversation looking outward, but then we started going inward. Do we even have trust with ourselves? Because, like we were saying, the degree to which our walls are up towards other people usually is a reflection of our own inner weakness that we feel. But if I have an like if I've got a relationship with myself, I trust myself to speak the truth. And I'm in this situation right now where I'm like, do I actually trust myself to speak the truth? Because I think that, and do I even like the truth? Sometimes we don't like the truth and therefore we hide it. We don't want it to come out into the light. So this question of what is our relationship with truth? And what is my relationship with myself? Do I trust that I will speak the truth? I will convey the truth. That is the truth strong enough to be a shelter and a haven for me? There's this concept of whatever happens after you speak the truth is the ideal outcome. That takes a lot of faith. And it goes circles, full circle, all the way back to how I started the show with what my dad said when I was in my early 20s. If you can just believe that God is good. So, and then it comes to this question of, okay, well, who do I trust? Do I trust myself? Do I trust the truth? Do I trust God? And in so doing, then we can speak the truth. Then we can act in accordance with the truth. And the truth actually becomes a safety guard. Because if I'm living my life in a way where everything I do is unimpeachable, then the truth can always come out. And there's nothing I have to hide. Nicole, I'm so glad to see you. It's been weeks. I'm so glad you're here. I'd love to hear how everyone's doing. I'm glad to see some of my familiar friends. This is just super meaningful. Stephen, good to see you. Sammy, oh, I'm so glad to see you. Oh, this is so wonderful. Sammy, we all just transferred Sammy into his wheelchair. We are all here. Sammy has been asking, and we've been praying for you. Oh, okay, so I have to say, Sammy is a friend of the Knowing Show, and he joined us at the beginning of this year. And the day, I think, Sammy, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the anniversary of your accident. And y'all, Sammy joined us, and he's just been such a wonderful friend of the show. And he's been diagnosed with being a C2 quadriplegic, and I am so inspired by this man. Sammy, I hope that your life has so much purpose. Every single one of us, whether oh man, this is gonna like choke me up, whether we are in a wheelchair and we cannot function the way that we used to, your life still has meaning. It does not matter what has happened to you. This is a wild belief system. It has not happened to you, but there is going to be good in it so that it can happen for you. How can this thing that has broken us completely, whether it's emotional breaking, whether it's physical breaking, whether it's even mental breaking, how can this thing that happened to us be for us? Because we get the choice. Am I going to trust God enough that He is good, that He can use this for good? And I am going to choose to intend with all of me that this thing that happened to me is going to be used for good. This is activating agency. This is stepping into the driver's seat of our life and saying, you know what? I can't control the stimulus, but I can control the response. I can't control what happens to me, but I can always control how I respond. And so, Sammy, I'm so inspired by you, my friend. And I feel so devastated for you that this is what happened to you. And at the same time, I have seen more and more people on stages. I saw a man who has no limbs. I think maybe he hasn't. I think he has no arms, no legs, but he kind of like he has stubs on his legs, and he kind of walks like that. And he was up there with Tony Robbins. And and really, like, how is the pain that we've gone through actually part of the very reason why we're here, perhaps? So I just hope you know that, man, you're so needed and so loved, and you really do. We need you. You really are needed. Oh, I love this. Brian says every block of stone has a statue inside it, and it is the task of the sculptor to discover it. So beautifully said. Mm. I love this. Percocet says you should know the issue, then decide how you feel about it. Yeah, we can't really have the thing that happened to us really impact us and even know how we feel about it until we square off with it. If we're hiding from the truth or we're hiding even from the pain of the experience, like I remember I would not revisit the day that my brother-in-law was killed. And so much of that actually had to do with my own shame over how I reacted. I did not call my sister, which I still like am horrified by. I didn't call my sister because I couldn't do anything. And my worth and value at the time was predicated solely in what I could do for people. So I couldn't fix it. And I think that was the first time in my life where I was like, I can't even pray. Prayer isn't even going to do anything. He's dead. And that was just, yeah, that caused me to have to go really deep and confront God effectively and be like, "What the heck?" And so in order to rebuild trust, talk about rebuilding trust and having trust in God actually means so often that we have to contend with him. And are we willing to contend with ourselves, our beliefs that have gotten us here to this point? Are we willing to contend with God himself and what has gotten us here to this point? And then are we willing to have something change? Do we want to have an alternative life, like a different experience? Or are we content with our current belief systems? Are we content with what we're currently experiencing in life? Or do we want something better? Do we want something different? Because the degree to which we want something different informs the action we will take. It will inform the depth to the truth to which we will go if we want something different. Just jumping back here on the chat. David, good morning. Mike, good morning. White Lion, hello. I got hello. 18 Malborn, good morning. I'm glad to see you. Giuseppe, good morning. Good to see you. Saber, good morning. Lynn, Ravi. Why do people cry when people die? I cried when my brother-in-law was killed. I think that I think a lot of people cry, and I think, to be honest, I think that there's an honoring of that, of the person, of the love lost, of the life lost. I think tears are a release. It's funny. We talked about this a little bit just about probably 10 minutes ago. Our body has the lymphatic system that cleanses our body of toxins and waste. And our brain has the glymphatic system, and it does the same for our brain. We don't have anything like that for the soul. And I actually have found tears to effectively be a similar type of release. It's a cleansing. Water comes out. It's a cleansing of the soul. It's a purging of the soul. I was speaking with a man regarding a knowing retreat, and he said, my mom told me when I was 7, if you don't stop crying, I'll give you something to cry about. And he said he hadn't cried since. He was probably 45. He hadn't cried in 38 years. Like, that's wild, because everything painful that has happened to him has really been kind of stuffed inside and suppressed. Johnson Smith, I love that, says I cry. Oh, it says I cry when, but it's natural to cry. We cannot control emotions. Y'all, thank you so much. Thank you so, so much for joining today. This has been such a wonderful conversation, and I'm so glad to be back with you. Man, it's good to be back. I'm glad to see so many familiar faces, and so grateful to be with you and just share our morning together. Reminding ourselves of the truth this morning, and just kind of circling back to this conversation of who do we trust. The one to which we trust is the one that has our greatest access to power. So what that means is, if I am trusting those around me, then they have so much power over me. If I am trusting God, then I have access to the power of of his spirit and the like access to him. So and who does he say I am? Well, if he says I am loved, if he says I am worthy, if God is the reflection in the mirror for me of who I am, then man, I'm going to walk in the fullness of my power. And ideally, we're surrounding ourselves physically with people who also remind us of who we are, so that we are better because of our access to these people, to the presence of God, than we were before. And we're standing taller. And we remember, man, I do have the power to be like God because I was made in his image. I have the breath of God in my lungs. And as a result, I get to be basically an ambassador. I get to represent him and be him, an extension of him to the world around me. Y'all, thank you so much for joining. I will see you tomorrow morning, 6 a.m. We're going to start getting back on